Well, welcome to the second segment of the Ultimate Workshop for Business Owners, 2014 Tax, Succession, and Estate Planning. This is the second segment on the succession planning, and just so everybody knows, we have one new person, one person left, so we're coming and going, but this program is being taped, and we're planning to put it on YouTube. And so I'm going to put this out there. Anybody that ends up watching this program on YouTube, we're going to be referring to handouts and materials that they will not have and that they should contact Amy Pennekamp or myself, Bill Hesh at heshlaw.com, or call us at 513-731-6601 at the law office. I was going to introduce Amy, and she stepped out, so I'll do that for the next segment. She'll be the lead speaker the next time, but I did want to introduce Kurt Friedman. He's the law clerk we got at our law firm, and he works with Amy, and he's been with us a couple years, and Amy's been with me 9 years. So I think it's really, important to me that we have a good team of people that work together when we try to do the planning that we do, whether it's the estate planning, the tax planning, the succession planning. I think that inside the guide you also find one of my marketing materials that has to do with Dick Christ. I have his daughter Sheila here, so I've worked with Dick for years, and it's a testimonial of the type of work that we do, from doing the tax planning, the estate planning, the financial planning, and it's all intertwined and interrelated. And I really appreciate Dick's testimonial that we put out in Cincy Magazine. And I would want to mention that the leading lawyer thing that is here. I'm honored to be recognized this year for the 10th year in a row then as a leading lawyer in Cincy Magazine in the trust and estate area. So that it's an honor that is a recognition. It's voted on by attorneys in Cincinnati. And there's usually around 150 attorneys that they recognize each year, 160. So with that, getting started here, we're going to turn to the handout that has succession planning notes. So it's on the right-hand side of your guide, should be on top. But I think that when I think about succession planning, it's something that a lot of times it's a family business. I was in business with my brother. I had my son as an employee in my law firm. We're not together. He dropped out of law school, so that was an easy decision from that standpoint. He had to leave. But my brother and I, we were together. I started my practice 20 years ago. So I've got hands-on experience with succession planning that's very unique for any type of advisor, an attorney or a CPA. It's also very unique. I was a CFO at Square Food Service. So when I was a tax partner at Touche Ross in the 80s, I worked with the firm and developed financial planning for business owners as a seminar. We did a national seminar in '88, and as a tax partner there, I was very active in the work that we did with business owners. I did a lot of succession planning, in particular in the '80s. That Charlie Square was Square Food Service. I worked with Charlie from '86 to '96 on his succession plan. And when you talk about hands-on, I mean, it was with his sons and his business, 4 sons in the company in 1986. And when I left Touche Ross, and it became Deloitte after the merger, I left a couple years after the merger, I went with Charlie in his company as a CFO in 1991 for 2 years. So I was inside the family business as a CFO, and I experienced the dynamics of a family business very personally. Aside from being an advisor for a number of businesses at Touche Ross and Deloitte, I experienced that I would go to lunch and I would go to Charlie, but the sons wouldn't join us. Okay, I was Charlie's guy. Okay, and so I worked inside the company, and they grew from 50 million to 70 million the 2 years I was with the company, and we did a lot of good work as a CFO. So I've been inside a company as a CFO that's very unique. And then I launched my practice. I had a 2-year covenant with Deloitte and Touche, and started my practice 20 years ago. I worked with Charlie when he ended up selling the company to a public company in 1996. So I went through the whole gamut, putting together the succession plan, the estate plan, and revising it, and updating it, and updating it, and updating it, and doing everything we could to save estate taxes. But at the same time, we were involved in trying to run a business and provide, and that was something heavy on his heart. So I experienced that firsthand with Charlie. With the family business. The business was his baby. The employees were his family. So it's very real. the dynamics of a family business. I really appreciate that because I've had that experience firsthand. And then when I started my own practice in 1993, it was Hesh and Hesh with my brother for 2.5 years. We're still brothers. Okay, we went our separate ways. I took my marbles and moved down the hall, and then we moved on with our practice. He's a CPA. So I've been involved in those situations, the dynamics of that, and I really fully appreciate that more than you would ever know. And so succession planning to me is not just about saving taxes or putting a document together. To me, I think it's important to help build in relationships between the family and also the key employees. You know, we just finished up an estate plan, and I will share this with you, that sometimes it takes a few years to get people to do something. We've been working with one client for 3 years on his estate plan. He had drafts for 2 years of documents. We finally got them executed, and we're finally, getting everything implemented, okay? But he chose that he knew the children weren't in the business, and he's got his key people that he set up a trust, and he's having them, the key people, in charge of making decisions on the business. So he's got his key people that's going to be the trustee of his trust that's going to run the business and make the decision whether to sell it, merge it, keep it going. And so those are his trusted people. He wanted to provide for his people that helped him build the business for the past 30 or 40 years. That's what it's all about. It's about relationships. And succession planning really hits on some big nerves. And it's unavoidable. There's a lot of good resources in town with the Gehring Center that provide formal seminars and formal training and formal processes, and that's good. And they actually work with small businesses. So I want to put a plug in for the Gehring Center. I mean, it's kind of interesting. John Gehring, who founded the Gehring Center, when he sold his company in Erlanger, I was his tax guy when he sold the company back in the 1986, 87 area when he's the one that founded John Gehring, the Gehring Center. So there's kind of a tie there that I worked with John and his brother Chuck when they sold their family business back in the late 80s when I was a tax partner at Touche Ross. But to me, what are the secrets for a successful business plan? And it really, I got to say, it's communication. It really is. And if you've ever had any family or friends that you know that have known other people in businesses, you got these family relationships that really inhibit some of the development of this communication line. And to me, it's something that you don't ignore. You just try to break down the walls a little bit at a time. You just keep at it. You try to open up communication. You try to help communicate what needs to happen for the business. And I kind of developed a process when I was with Touche Ross in the 80s, and you'll see the article that I wrote that really outlined on page 4 and on the back page that for family businesses, for planning management succession. I wrote this back in 1990, and when I was specializing this at Touche Ross and Deloitte as a tax partner. Pardon? I think the copy machine got it blurred a little bit, That's a young version of Bill Hesh. You mean I've aged? Oh, come on, So, but anyway, this article really outlines what's in my outline because I've done this with family businesses. It's been amazing to me when I've gone in and I've asked the right questions. I talked about that in the tax session. It's asking the right questions. I didn't figure this out till a few years ago. What can make me effective as an advisor to my client, whether it's a tax advisor, doing estate planning or tax planning or financial planning or succession planning. And it's about asking the right questions. What are the real issues? And so I think that, to me, the process requires some type of roadmap that you just don't travel cross country without a map. And I look at succession planning as something that's a long-term process. It isn't something that's a quick thing. And I can share that with you too. That everyone knows that Charlie ended up selling the company to a public company, but at the same time he had 4 sons in the business, and we started the process out, and they mutually agreed to sell the company at that time when they did sell it. So I felt good about that process because it was a healthy process that collaboratively, you believe it or not, over a 10-year period, they all agreed on something that was very, very important. should we sell this company to a public company? They sold it to JP Food Service, which became U.S. Food Service. And then some of the Square people left, and they, after the merger, and they formed Queensgate Food Service. So that's been in business for a number of years now. And I just found out last year that they sold out to another company. So it went on, down there at Linden Dalton Street, Queensgate Food Service. So what I would identify with then, if we go there on page 3 of this outline then, and this, I try to keep things simple. I don't think life needs to be that complicated. It's just asking the right questions. And I think that, to me, I always try to identify where the company needs to be in 5 to 10 years. How will it get there? Are you on the same page? Some people want to grow, some people don't. Some people want to go in a different direction. Some people want to do this or do that. And so I think it's important for communication to put basically an idea of where the company, what are the goals, and what kind of high-level work plans. And identify the current organizational chart. When I work with Charlie, it's not typical. You'll see that a lot of entrepreneurs, everything is built around the entrepreneur. They got everybody coming to the owner of the business. And if anybody in the business doesn't like what they want as they try to build the business and have management team in place, if somebody doesn't like what they want, they just go around the management team and go back to the owner. That's the culture, the internal culture of a company, how it really operates. Okay? And so it's really important in the succession planning process that the key employees are identified, and the business owner, works with those key employees to find out where the key employees want to be in 5 to 10 years. I've learned from a lot of clients that, you have your key employees and you treat them well and pay them well, and they'll be with you for a long time and very loyal, and it's a win-win. That's what life is about. It's about a win-win. How do you get a win-win? That's what I'm looking for in a succession plan. And we're, trying to identify, one thing I have found is that a business owner typically needs to know where the family's going to be before they go to the key employees. Don't get the cart before the horse. And I've been surprised sometimes when I've gone in and, there might be, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 children in the business, and I go through this process. I got the outline attached here. I ask them these questions. I individually interview them so they can give honest feedback. That I'll tell the owner that you might need someone like that as a mediator to be a buffer that they can give honest feedback, because a lot of times the kids are only going to tell dad or mom what they want to hear, what they think they want to hear. So I was able in one situation to find out that 2 of the sons in the business did not want to become president, but 2 did, and it wasn't ironic that they were the 2 that were stabbing each other in the back, trying to prove to dad that they were better than their brother. So dad would pick that person to be president of the company. And have those discussions with dad about that. You need to give me voting control of the company. Who's going to have the swing vote? You have 4 sons in the business. What are you going to do? Okay. So we got the dialogue out there. At least we knew who. But what I ended up doing is I ended up getting them back and saying, well, if you want to be president, what you need to do is you're in charge of sales. You need to be successful in sales. And you also need to groom the person that's going to be taking over sales, because if you want to be president, who's going to take care of sales? You can't wear both hats. So you need to develop your people in your department. And oh, by the way, the other guy's in charge of the warehouse. And you need to be successful in managing that warehouse and controlling your costs and managing the fleet, the equipment, and the people. And you need to identify who's going to manage the warehouse if you're going to be president down the road here. I got them focused on where their responsibilities within the company, and the company exploded. And they started working together I always ask the question, what's in the best interest of the company? So sometimes they had different agendas. They really do have different agendas. They're trying to, and there's things that go back to childhood that cause this type of behavior within a family business. The dynamics are unbelievable. Then we can also identify weaknesses in the current and future organizational charts, and then we try to identify how do we address that. And we focus on people may need to get training. And I can relate to this. I mean, I think part of the reason the entrepreneur I am and how I manage my business, and how I've managed it for the past 20 years, is that when I started at Touche Ross in their tax department, I got management training every year. And I became a partner after a few years. I started there in in 80 and became a partner in 86 and got partner training for 5 years before I left. So I had management training, and I also had people I worked with that were mentors with me. I was, that type of training is invaluable, and I've experienced that and how that helped me grow professionally and as a business owner. So, it is important, and that's where the Gehring Center can help people with training. Or maybe you go to UC or NKU or one of the colleges or universities and get some, whatever the training skills that you need, leadership development training. Maybe you need a leadership class. I had that at Touche Ross. How to be a leader. It takes some special skills. What makes someone good in sales does not make them good as a president of a company. It's different skill sets are required each step of the way. So what makes someone really good in operations doesn't mean that they're suitable to be the president of the company. Different duties and responsibilities. The goal setting, the visioning that's required for a president of the company. So there's a lot of issues that are out there, but to me it all boils down to communication and getting the team working together and getting outside resources and identifying which outside resources that you need to use in order to really get the job done. We may need to look at career paths or evaluations and evaluate current and future people and identify where does this person fit into the picture the next 3 to 5 years. Okay? To me, when I try to focus on then the bottom line, and I talk about my article, I try to get everybody together saying, hey, why don't we start planning about 2014? Why don't we do that right now? Okay? Let's start working together as a management team as if dad or mom aren't here. And what would you recommend we be doing? How can we help this company be more profitable? How can we, what issues need to be tackled? Let the management people that you think are going to run the company start, I'm trying to get the owner to delegate. And that's one thing that the owners don't want to delegate anything. They want to hold all their cards to their chest. They don't delegate. We're creatures of habit. They've been doing this for how many years? It is hard to change your habits. We're just human. So they're going to hold it. No, I'm not going to let, I can't let control, right? It's all about control. And what's wrong with that? Because guess what? It's their livelihood. It's their retirement. It's their financial security. Most business owners, the business is their financial security. We talk about succession. They're scared to death. You know why? I know. The first day I was in business, I was scared to death. It doesn't leave you. Now, some people, maybe they can control that. I can't. And it's kind of interesting. The first month I was in business, every day I said, fear is a great motivator. If you look at myself in the mirror, fear is a great motivator, You got to feel it, and then you got to go out and do it then. That's courage then, to walk through your fears and go out and do what you need to do. So it's a process that I feel that what I've encouraged clients that are working on succession planning, I'm really trying to focus on trying to put together a business plan for the next year. You kind of test everyone that you're trying to evaluate what their future roles would be. You try to, I'm trying to get the owner to take different direction, and it's, a new habit. It's hard to break. And, they're not going to let go until they're ready, I got to tell you. So I can't push them. I don't go in there saying, you should do this. I try to present options and identify issues. And one thing I think is positive, though, is if we go through the succession process and try to say, hey, how can we make 2014 a better year than 2013? Let's just start there. I'm not worried about what's going to happen 3 or 5 years now. I'm worried about what's going to happen today and tomorrow. And that's the other thing I find, too, that the business owners that are successful are ones that create a sense of urgency. Okay? I learned that from my clients. I learned it from Charlie Squarey. I always remember when I met with him one day, and he had his best year ever for the company. I go, wow, Charlie, that's fantastic. I'm kind of the upbeat kind of guy or whatever. And he was just complaining. He wasn't happy at all. He was worried about next year. And I learned the lesson from that. With my business, I'm always looking at, okay, what can I do different? I learned that in Life Success. I knew Steve Haber from Life Success program the last number of years. He does a great job when I've gone there fifth days several times with him. He's a facilitator. But with Steve, what I learned in Life Success is if you always do what you've always done, you always get what you've always got. You get the same results. I know that life is about change, and we have to be open to change. We got to embrace change. And that's the key to a succession plan. The companies that succeed today are the ones that are able to change with the changing environment. I had to experience that. You all did too if you're in business in 2008 when that recession hit. You know, I was very fortunate. I feel very blessed. Got a great group of people. We had to work harder. We had to be more strategic. Did some good marketing. And with Amy and Scott and Carrie's, support, we got recognized, the law firm in the Emerging 30 here at the Chamber for 2 years in a row, in 2011, 2012. Fastest growing businesses in Northern Kentucky. We doubled our law firm practice in 2011, 2012 from where it was in 2009. We sustained that growth and we're continuing on. We hired Kurt. So, that's a blessing. And I think that, you work with your key people and you try to basically realize that it is about what do we need to do to be successful next year. I just tweaked my marketing program. We just did this seminar. We're thinking out of the box. We're developing our materials. We're becoming better as an attorney or as a CPA. We're doing better things. We're doing more things. We're trying to do a better job. Continuous improvement. That's what it's all about. That's what drives a thriving, successful company. So the business owner, that is trying to drive management, the thing is that sometimes people don't have the mindset of a business owner when they don't own the business. So that's something that I've worked with some clients on, that we try to get the family owning some business, or get people, if they don't own the business, we use a thing called phantom stock. So their compensation is a bonus plan that is based upon the growth of the company. So that, again, we get them engaged. You hear that term, engagement. If an employee is engaged, you're going to get better results in your company. So we do phantom stock if we don't want to bring them into the company as an owner, but yet we want them to be rewarded for the efforts that they do to grow the company. So at the bottom of page 3, to me, when you go through this planning process and put together a good business plan and work with people on their succession plan, and we're going to go through a little bit more detail of that, to me, the benefits you're looking for is improved organization, direction, planning, communication between the owner and key employees. The people need to know where they are and where they're going. Where's the company? Where's the company? Where's the company going? They know what the plans are for the future, and I say, well, I'm not worried about 3 years from now. What are you going to do next year? What are you going to do this month? Let's start taking action now. And I think it creates a better relationship, a closer bond. And that's when you open up, when you develop those relationships, and you communicate more. And hopefully, you're going to make more money in 2014. We're in business to make money. That's not, for a lot of people, that's not the number one thing, but it does help. It does help. And people wouldn't complain about that at all. Okay, I kind of talk about, we try to improve our processes in our law firm and our CPA firm. Try to be strategic, but part of the thing in a business is if you can operate your business more profitably, how can you do that? It isn't like I've added more people, that we do more work with the same people. We have value added to our services. We're able to work more strategically to get the job done more efficiently. So it isn't a question of just getting more business in. That's part of the equation, but the other part of the equation to increase profitability is to improve your operations and your processes and get training and do things differently that allow you to be better in whatever you're trying to accomplish in your business. So if I kind of and I guess pages 5 through 10, this is a form that I actually use with people. So I'll go in and I'll have them fill out ahead of time, and I'll meet with them if they want me to. And I gotta say, I've done this with a client that with some succession planning that I found, and I will make this observation, the companies that can do this on their own, that need less help from an outside advisor, are the ones that are typically more successful. Because they typically, take the initiative, they're engaged, but there are family situations that are really at a bad situation. I went in a couple of years ago to a client and went through this process. Yeah, the mom was running the business. A lot of competition in the business. It wasn't a growing business at all. They're barely making it, but they're making it, They had a son and a daughter. The daughter was in the business. The son was outside the business, but they were thinking about bringing him back in, and we're trying to get everybody on the same page. And they just had all kinds of conflict going on between the mother and the daughter. So I sat down with the daughter to try to, answer these questions. What is your current position, and then, with the company, if you died or become disabled, what about 3 to 5 years from now, or 10 years from now? Where do you want to be? What duties and responsibilities do you want over the next 3 to 5, 10 years? Your mom's 60. It's time, to try to figure out, what's the succession plan going to look like? On page 6, then we talk about, who are your key employees in your business? It's important that the family understands who the key employees are, particularly if the family is involved in the business, and it's not unusual that the business owner wants their family member to take over the business. That is just natural. It's natural. Okay? A sense of pride and accomplishment that their family member is taking over the business. It does. It gives great pride in that business owner when that family member is taken over. But then you also identify, if you do have a key employee, what if that person died or became disabled? What would, and that's one of these things sometimes where you try to cross-train people in different businesses, and you try to use cross-training. But small businesses are so small, sometimes it's not, the plan might be we're just going to go out and hire somebody if something happens, because we're so small, we're not going to be able to, have everybody do everybody else's job, You identify key weaknesses in the current operations of the company, and so we're trying to identify how can we increase profitability and how can we improve on those weaknesses. What are the problems the company currently faces? Short-term, long-term problems, or competition? What's going on with our product, or sales, or employees? One of the big things, in the area here is trying to get good people to work for you. I feel blessed in my practice that I get some really good people working for me. That's the key right there. That's that really. And you know what? I learned that from Charlie. That's so funny. I'm the tax partner, and Charlie says, "Hey, Bill, what's my most important asset here in the business?" Well, he's got this huge company, this warehouse, the trucks, he's got these salespeople. He's got over 100 employees. He says, "Bill, I was guessing everything wrong. I'm a nerdy financial guy, and he said, "No, it's my employees. That's the life of my company. Your employees are the life and blood of your organization." So, that's the key, I think, is being able to, develop a relationship with your key people and your total team, and get everybody working on the same page. And so, the part of the strategy is, trying to get the family engaged, or key people. I have key people answer these questions too. As to what steps the company should be taking to try to face these problems, and which long-term initiatives are needed for the long-term problems. And then we have the proverbial organizational chart of who's going to take over the company when the owner dies or becomes disabled. And sometimes it's real simple, but sometimes there's a competitive nature, and you have some family members wanting the same job. They want to run the company. And then I always just try to focus then. I always say, well, okay, let's focus on, okay, we've done all this great planning and everything. What can we do this year in 2014 to improve the profitability of the company? It's kind of interesting. I learned this when I was at Scurry Foods. When you think about a culture, I went in, there was 10 people in the accounting and finance department, a controller and accounts payable, accounts receivable. And I had a meeting saying, well, look, I want everybody to kind of give me some ideas. I'm new here. What do you think we can do to improve what we're doing within the organization? How many responses do you think I got in the next 30 days? None. Okay. So I said, okay, well, that didn't work. Punt the ball. I've got to do something different. So I said, well, okay, well, I'm going to meet with you then the next 30 days, and I want your personal feedback. What do we need to do? So I met individually with each person. They were more willing to open up. And, the lady in accounts receivable said, well, we spent all morning copying all the checks that come in this company. And then we spent all afternoon just putting them in the computer. But I don't know why we're making copies of all these checks. I go, well, yeah, why are you? It's, well, we've always done it that way. Oh. Do we really need to? No. When we have the check come in, we can just record it, and we have our deposit. We don't make a copy of the check. This company is at $50 million in sales, and they're making a copy of every check that comes in every day. Well, the two people in accounts receivable, all of a sudden, they freed up their whole morning. Imagine that. And they were so backloaded, they couldn't even handle the credits and accounts receivable because that was done in data processing because they didn't have enough time. So they took all that work in data processing and freed that lady up. And they started handling all the credits, which is where they should have been in accounts receivable. I went to the accounts payable department. I go, what do you think we should, we've been doing, what we do every day? I go, what do you do? He says, well, every day we sit down, we code every invoice that comes in. And then all afternoon, we entered into the computer. I said, why do you do that? Well, Touche Ross told us to do that. I go, oh, really? Well, what if you just got the invoice in and put it into the computer? Well, yeah, we wouldn't have to, by hand, put the account numbers, just go ahead and enter well, yeah. So we had two people in accounts payable with a part-time person who was going to retire. And they thought we were going to have to hire a full-time person to replace her. And we eliminated that step that they didn't have to do all that, and she retired, and we operated with two people instead of three people. What I had learned there is that the people have the answers you're looking for. In an organization, you can go to your people, and they've been doing the job every day. But you know what? What about the culture? That's exactly what they told me. Why? I've said things before, but they never do anything, right? That's the culture of some companies out there, that people are just in that mindset. That's what happens. So from that perspective, then, I think it is something that when you have a company with key employees and with all your employees, really get their feedback, embrace them, get everybody involved in the business as much as you can. I kind of have a philosophy with Amy, Carrie, Scott, Kurt, that I'm giving them feedback on a daily basis. That's what I try to do. Why wait? I'm going to give you a review in 6 months. I'm not just processing information through. Every day, every project, I give them direct feedback on, okay, well, how's it going? We need this or that, whatever it is. Why wait? It isn't like you're going to have this evaluation 6 months from now and try to remember what happened then. So you really try to focus on working on a daily basis, giving people feedback. And part of this, I'm a delegator. I can tell you, that, and I will admit this. In my practice, I don't do any tax returns on the computer. They do everything. I don't draft any documents. Amy and Kurt do everything. I am a delegator, an ultimate delegator. Now, I review everything, everything goes, I'm in charge of quality control, okay? But I figured that my billing rate clients cannot afford to have me put data into any machine. I'm not a typist, and I'm not a data entry clerk. Okay, they do a great job. Getting documents processed from the law firm or tax returns processed on an efficient basis. I'm trying to, and you can work in your business, and that's what you need to focus on. How do you try to delegate and empower your employees to work with you? And with the succession plan, then, I think that the thing that I would emphasize with the communication is it's a long-term journey. It's not, okay, we're going to do this in 6 months, we're done. No. It's a process. It's an ongoing process, an annual type of process where you build your team together, and you try to build basically the person, the cream rises to the top you always hope for, So you try to empower your people, and if you don't empower them, you're holding them back, you're stifling them from that standpoint. So I don't know, does anybody have any questions? I know we're getting to the end of the, yes, Keith.
When you spoke of the phantom stock strategy, could you explain, I guess, about the reward aspect? I'm assuming that the rewards were phantom in one way, but still to kind of show that ownership approach.
Yeah. It's a very good technique that's used when we say the only thing fan about it is the stock. In other words, they're not a shareholder in the company. They're not an owner of the business. Okay? But you're going to compensate them as if they were an owner, and if the company increases in value, which you have to define what that is, we try to define that, then if they leave employment, then they get that money. A lot of times we use the phantom stock for golden handcuffs. In other words, I have a client that has phantom stock with key people, and they're going to own 5% of the company, but they're going to earn it over a 10-year period. So longevity. So they vest in their bonus. It's basically a deferred compensation plan that says you're going to earn a bonus whenever you leave the company, and you're going to vest in it. But if you leave, but you're going to earn, the longer you stay, the more you're going to get. Okay, so it's a win-win. You're trying to encourage key people to stay in your company, and you have deferred compensation then. And there's some tax rules that apply that when they do vest, that it is supposed to be reported on their W-2 as Social Security wages, because Social Security law is different than income tax law. So, we found out that, and it was kind of interesting, this is a client that their CPA didn't know how to handle that. So they hadn't been doing it right. So we had to work with them on doing that correctly. We also found out that the CPA didn't understand phantom stock, even though this is a case that happened a few years ago. It had been in place for 10 years, but it wasn't on the financial statements. Okay, when the employees vest, it should be on the books. It is like an accrued bonus. It is a liability of the company. And the amount that it vested in this particular company was around $300,000. Okay? And this guy owned 5% of the company. Well, they had an employee that was younger, in his 40s, who got killed one weekend. I've been telling them about doing this stuff, and they hadn't done it. And they realized, oh my gosh, we need to do this because, the CPA had to reissue the financial statements because their buyout was based upon the book value of the company. It was a very simple formula. And because they hadn't accrued the bonus, the equity of the company was $300,000 overstated, and 5% of that is $15,000. Now, the other thing the owner didn't realize about this deferred comp plan was this thing was an employee had only been there a year or two, but it had a death benefit provision that said that if you die, you're going to get all of it. Okay, well, that was kind of nice, but he didn't have any insurance. Normally, you would buy insurance to fund that. He's 40 years old, you buy, $150,000 or whatever it was of term insurance. Okay, to fund that. So they ended up, oh my gosh, we owe 5%. It was a big number. Okay, because it was $150,000, but it could have been $165,000. So they were, we did what we could to minimize the damage, but it was the right thing to do. I mean, from a GAAP accounting standpoint, a financial standpoint, this was an accrued bonus that wasn't on the books. We only accrued what was vested, not what had not been earned yet, that would be earned in the future over the 10-year period for each of the key employees. But it's a nice technique that gives them ownership in the company to incentivize them that if the company grows, they're going to get more money. It's going to be tied into the value of the company. With phantom stock, you can have different ways. There's not any one way to define it. Every business is different. So you may use a formula that values the company. Or you may do a simplified method like they did, because that really wasn't the value of the company, okay, with that phantom stock plan. Because, that was just the book value. When I say book value, that's on the financial statement, you have the assets minus the liabilities. So that if they sold all the assets for cash and paid off all the debt, that's the cash they'd have left. Okay, but if they sold the company, they probably would have gotten more money. But the phantom stock agreement, because you have problems trying to value the company, you have good years, bad years, and everything else. We had all kinds of problems with that company because the attorney and the CPA that put it together didn't understand what it was. Okay, the business owner didn't realize that if he didn't take a salary out in a year, that increased the value of the company, didn't it? Which, so he didn't take out a salary we found out he had underpaid himself probably $1 million over the last 10 years. Some years he didn't take a salary. So it increased the value of the company, okay? Or he had to pay tax on the income. He didn't take the money out of the company. He left the money in the company. He needed money in the company. So he had an extra $1 million in the company that really, he was generous. That was money that he didn't pay himself a salary. So if you don't pay yourself a salary, you have a higher profit, right? So, he's now paying himself a reasonable salary every year, from that standpoint. We had all kinds of issues. Any other questions? Well, I think that I guess in summarizing this section on succession planning, the thing that I would encourage you, if you're involved in a succession plan, is to deal with one other issue. And then we talk about death and we talk about succession planning. But one thing that a lot of people miss and is the fact that what about a disability of an owner? And do you have the documents in place to handle the operation of the company if someone is just in a car accident, has a stroke? Most disabilities are only for a year or two. And what are your plans? And if you have a business, you can, whether you typically have a corporation, so you might have officers that typically you have the president of the company, and if the president can't serve, the vice president kicks in. So are your corporate minutes up to date? And is the vice president really the person you want to run the company if the president of the company becomes disabled or sick? So you need to look at your legal structure of the business for succession planning, okay? And you need to identify whether or not and there's different ways that this can happen, because then the owner of the business also may have the stock or the ownership. If he owns it personally, or he or she, then whoever has the durable power of attorney typically has the right to take over control of the company and replace the officers of the company as the shareholder or as the owner of the LLC. So the person with the power of attorney has the ultimate control, and the owner might think that they set up a vice president, but their spouse or whoever has their power of attorney can step in and undo whatever the owner wanted to be done. That you need to incorporate whatever planning you want into your durable power of attorney. This is the document we're talking about in the next section, but it's really important for succession planning purposes when you're trying to identify what's going to happen if somebody becomes disabled, a key person. And particularly if it's the owner of the company, then the person who has the power of attorney typically has control. Now, if you do a estate plan and you have a trust and your stock is owned inside your trust, then the trustee has ownership of the company and can control how the company would be managed. So whoever your trustee is, which that typically is the same person that would handle your financial decisions for assets that you own personally. Okay? So it's important to really look at those documents and have your corporate minutes up to date if you're a corporation. But it's also not just a routine type of thing. The president and the vice president is very important, because if the president can't serve, the vice president steps in, right? That's a corporation. If you're a limited liability company, you're either member managed or manager managed. Okay? In Kentucky, if you're manager managed, it's like having an officers run the company. It has to be in your articles of incorporation, articles of organization in the state. You don't have to do that in Ohio. But if you're going to be operated by managers, then managers are going to be running the company, but you got to look in your operating agreement to see who the successor is for the managers. So that would be in your operating agreement if you're manager managed. If you're member managed, then the members act as a general partnership, and any member can do anything on behalf of the limited liability company. So the legal structure and how you're operating the limited liability company or the corporation, those are two different legal entities, and they have different legal structures. And you need to identify who the people are, whatever structure you have, and that's something you should be following up with your attorney or advisor about, so that if anything happened, we have to plan for the worst and expect the best. If you're going to plan for the worst and you do the right thing, then part of the succession plan is you need to plan for your disability. And actually, in your 40s and 50s, you're 3 times more likely to be disabled than die. So disability is a much higher risk. That's why disability insurance is much higher than life insurance in your 40s and 50s. The risk. Okay? Which is another thing, from a financial planning perspective, is, disability insurance. And that's something that I do with my employees. We have a group policy. It is really very affordable. Now, that the benefit, everybody gets 60% of their income if they become disabled. It is taxable to them, but it's a nice long-term, on a long-term and a short-term basis. I have that for my employees as a benefit. It's an excellent benefit. And I also am covered too. And in my old age, it kind of helps me out too, if anything would happen to me, because I'm more likely to be disabled to die anyway. So, from that standpoint, long-term disability is good. But, from that standpoint. Any other questions? Okay. Well, we're going to take another break. We'll be back in, let's say, 10 minutes. All right? Thank you.